Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the first sitting of the new Parliament, on her appointment as Speaker, the member for East Rural, St. Andrew, indicated a determination to adhere to the standing orders in how this Parliament would be conducted. The two standing orders which are engaged in this discussion are Standing Order 68.3 and Standing Order 75.3. 68.3, as has been read, essentially says that these sessional select committees, which we're appointing today, should not include among their membership ministers or parliamentary secretaries. It is a fundamental standing order which supports good governance in our democracy. This is not about quibbling whether a question is in fact a statement or you're speaking a bit too long and the sort of things that often engage the Speaker at any given point in time in the cut and thrust of parliamentary proceedings. This is about the separation of powers, about accountability in governance, and about how Parliament should have appropriate checks and balances for executive excess. And that is why these sessional committees, which are review and oversight committees, are supposed to be established without the presence of persons from the executive thereon. There is no issue about government MPs being on them, and in fact, the rules provide for the government MPs providing a majority of the members of these committees. And it's based on the balance in a given parliament from time to time. That's in the standing orders, and while in Australia we heard they may think that that is not an ideal situation, it is what governs our parliament. The issue is executive influence, undermining the efficacy and transparency of oversight functions of parliament in our democracy. I'd also say that the way this motion was put did not make any reference to any suspension of the standing orders. There was a suspension of the standing orders to enable the motion to be put. But the substance of the motion simply said, notwithstanding 68.3 and so on. Notwithstanding 68.3. Notwithstanding, it was repeated for each one of the elements of the motion. There was no invocation of the suspension of standing orders. And furthermore, I think it's an abuse of the standing order that provides for the suspension thereof for a fundamental standing order which is expressed in terms which precludes and prohibits a course of action to be pursued by invoking the provision that says that standing orders may be temporarily suspended. That is an abuse of that provision, and that's not the intention of that provision. The other standing order which is fundamental to this discussion is 75.3, and that deals with how chairmen are to be appointed for these sessional select committees. And it says that a select committee may elect a chairman from among its members. Therefore, for the leader of government business to purport today to determine who will be chairing these committees is ultra vires the rules of this House and ultra vires this particular standing order. There is nothing in the standing orders that authorize any departure from the provision that the members of the committee are to elect their chairman in relation to any of these committees, save and except those which specifically provide that the chairman is to be a particular individual, and there are a few like that. So, for example, the committee that deals with standing orders says in 70 subsection 2 says that the speaker shall be a member and chairman of that committee. Similarly, the House committee also says that the minister in charge of arranging the business of the House shall be a member and the chairman of the House committee. And the Privileges Committee also says, the provisions there say that the speaker shall be a member and the chairman of the Committee of Privilege. Those are the three where the standing order specifically authorized, in the case of the House committee, that the minister in charge of arranging the business of the House shall be. That is the only exception to the rule in the standing orders that ministers are not to be on these committees. So where we're heading today is a breach of the standing orders, is a breach of the principles of checks and balances in our democracy, and should not be supported. At the first sitting of this Parliament, I raised the issue of the chairmanship of these committees in light of the comment made by the Prime Minister at his swearing-in ceremony, invoking the spirit of partnership. And I said that as part of that partnership, we were hoping and expecting the reintroduction of a convention that had been established under a JLP government, when Prime Minister was Bruce Golding, that exhorted the members of the committees then to appoint an opposition member to chair the committees. It worked well. It was an improvement on our democracy, and it did not violate the standing orders because the specific standing order, 75.3, allows that choice to be made by the members. When Portia Simpson Miller, the most honorable, became Prime Minister under the PNP government of 2012, we did not depart from that convention. To the contrary, we saw that it was an enhancement of our democracy, and we elected to follow it. And it has worked well. When the Jamaica Labour Party was returned to office in 2016, for that first term, they too, under Andrew Holness as Prime Minister, followed that convention. It was only after the 2020 election that there was a departure from that convention, and it was justified, in quotes, it was justified on the premise that the committees weren't performing adequately and that they would perform much more efficaciously if the government controlled the committees through appointing the chair. So the government has the majority on the committees, and the government appoints the chairman of the committees. That is the antithesis of oversight. As a member, the newly minted member for Northwest St. Catherine said, that is not an arena of accountability. That is a ring of self-defense for the executive. So, Mr. Speaker, it was with a strong sense of disappointment that I speak in this debate on this motion. I am extremely alarmed and disappointed that the government is proceeding down this undemocratic path in violation of the standing orders. I urge them to reconsider this, as we will not support this motion. Thank you.
Member from St. Catherine South Western.
Mr. Speaker,